Alright, let's now start talking about specifically the initial model that we're going to create. Remember, this will be the most abstract model that we're going to create in the pipeline of models. And I want to emphasize in the very first slide that we are basically performing a modeling activity called abstraction, which means we're going to filter out all the details that we simply don't care at the moment, even though we might care later, but not in the current model. Right? That's called abstraction. Let me give you more idea about what I really mean. And that's kind of the technique you really want to pick up, hopefully by the end of the course, as we go through the case study. Again, abstraction simply means you're going to ignore any details that are not relevant at the point of analysis. And in this most abstract perception of the bridge controller, remember we're talking about the public perception about the controller system. Right? In this most abstract version, you will be amazed. We do not even consider bridge, traffic lights, and also sensors. Your intuition might be, well, aren't we supposed to develop a bridge controller? But in this case, you don't even talk about like a controller equipment, like a traffic lights and also sensors. You don't even talk about a bridge. Wow, actually that's exactly what we're going to do in this initial most abstract model, because the only thing that we're going to address in this initial model will be this particular requirement, which will be requirement number 2. Let's revisit that very quickly. The number of cars on bridge and island is simply limited. So what we're going to abstract away will be the bridge, and also we kind of want to not distinguish between bridge and also island. We don't want to even talk about a bridge. All we're going to talk about will be the number of cars over here being limited. That's the only thing we're going to focus on. I'll show you exactly what I mean. And let me have some analogies over here for you. That's also from the textbook. Okay. So what you want to really have in mind for this initial model is we want to somehow observe the bridge controller system from very high in the sky. Meaning that everything somehow becomes kind of unclear, but the only thing that's clear to us is about we actually got the island and the bridge somehow kind of getting combined as a compound, right? And then we also got a mainland over here. Let me just visualize that a little bit over here. Okay. So the abstraction that we really have is, you can see when we imagine that this is the picture that you will see, maybe from an airplane, from the sky. So all you can see is the island and also bridge appear as a single compound over here. Okay, so this is really important. So this is really the abstraction that I was talking about. As far as requirements number 2 is concerned, we don't really have to distinguish between the bridge and also the island. We don't have to. All we gotta distinguish would be the island and the bridge as a single compound. Another compound will just be the mainland. And also anything that's in between is simply has been abstracted away. Right? Let me write it down. Abstraction is we simply abstract away the bridge existing between the island and mainland. You can expect maybe some later refinements we're going to zoom in. That's another analogy. Think about later refinement that we're going to conduct will be to zoom in to the picture so we can see more clearly about the bridge, right? So the introduction of the bridge somewhere, you can think about in the middle, right? Let me just draw it this way, right? Eventually we're going to introduce this particular bridge, right? So bridge will be added at a later refinements. And the follow-up question will be, what exactly are we going to analyze and prove in this initial model, given that it is so abstract? We don't even have a bridge. So what kind of property can we really address? That's exactly the 2 arrows over here you will see. And I'm going to give more details as we introduce the events and also the state space for the initial model. But you can think about, all we care will be in this particular compound of island and bridge, and also for this particular compound for the mainland. Let me just annotate it quickly. This will be one compound. This will just be another compound over here. This will be just another one. Between these two compounds, we want to see how the cars can actually move in between. So cars maybe go from one to the other, and one may go from one to the other one to this one here, right? Both directions. In that case, how is the number of cars going to be changed? And it should be somehow limited. That's really what we're going to see. All right, the number of cars is the only thing that we're going to model and specify formally in this initial model, and make sure it is limited. It should be subject to maybe some upper bounds. That's all we're going to see, right? All right, so that's about the abstraction mechanism that we're going to use for this model here. You can think about even if, even in the later refinements, we're actually going to introduce the idea about the bridge. In the later refinement, even for that particular model, we still abstract away certain other details which we don't really include in the model, right? Just think about the most concrete model you can have is really the source code, in which case everything that should be that should really make your system eventually work and execute, everything should be there. But now we're not really doing that for that purpose. All we want to do is we want to construct something that only include details that would be relevant for proving certain requirements. We want to only talk about a proper subset of the requirements at this point. That's all we're going to do. All right, hopefully that's enough about the intuition you want to get about abstraction. I think the main takeaway for this slide will be to understand what really is abstraction. Okay, and as I said, later on we're going to zoom in onto the system to see how the bridge, how the controller, how the sensors, and how other things can be added into our story for the verification. All right, so now let's talk about the state space for the model.